Good evening and welcome to episode 21 of the Jacksonian. As I have with me is the co-host of Double Fries No Slaw, Richie Barnes, as we will be going over the 2023 season, the reaction to Florida State getting left out of the top four, the Jordan Travis injury, the Orange Bowl preview, amongst other topics. How you doing tonight, good sir?
I'm doing well, man. I appreciate you having me on, and I always love talking Florida State football, so it's hard for me to say no.
Yeah. Would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, man. I grew up a diehard Florida State fan, really since '95. Went to Florida State, graduated in 2010, and the past 3 years or so been doing Double Fries No Slaw, a Florida State podcast. Luckily we've built a lot of connections. We've had every single head coach from every single sport on the podcast, former athletes, current athletes, and our athletic director Michael Alford, who has a lot going on his plate right now regarding the ACC, which we'll get into, I'm sure. But yeah, it's just been a blast doing this and getting to meet new people and just talking about what I love, which is Florida State football.
There we go. That's the way to go, man. Talking about Florida State football. Speaking of which, I want to go over a little bit about the 2023 season. I mean, it's been a tremendous season, and I, for one, doubted them in the preseason because I was just kind of like, oh, this team's a candidate for disappointment. I feel like they're going to go 8-4, and I thought they were going to go down against LSU, Florida. I know I had them going down against Clemson, but I had them going down against Pitt because I kind of felt like, oh, they're going to Pitt. That's where top 25 teams go to die.
Yeah, and it's funny when we did our preview show on the season. I was fairly high on Florida State. I had us going 11-1, and actually the one loss I had was at Pittsburgh. I felt fairly confident against LSU, being in Orlando, being that we beat them last year in New Orleans. That was a great atmosphere, great game. Clemson to me this year was you have to beat them because if you don't, when are you going to take the ACC back? Especially with all these players that we knew it was going to be their last year. It just, we were in a situation where it was ACC champs or bust. And in my opinion, not necessarily playoff or bust, and we'll get into this later, but 13-0, we should be in the playoff. But yeah, I thought we'd have a really good season. And it's funny you mentioned Pitt because that's the one game in preseason preview that I had us losing.
Oh, that is, holy cow. I did not think about that. But they are pretty scary. I mean, Louisville can tell you that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, I mean, they didn't scare North Carolina, but I think Pitt will probably go back to scaring more top 25 teams next.
Yeah, and it's just a weird year for Pitt because, I think a lot of people projected them as a pretty solid team, and they're very physical. And the fact that Florida State went up there in November, kind of, right, I think it was right before or after Miami. I think it was right before Miami, actually, so kind of in a look-ahead spot. Yeah, it was Pitt, Miami, North Alabama, Florida. So it was just a tough spot, classic trap game, in the weather that most of our roster is not really, acclimated to. Great win by Florida State, I think, going up there, with Miami looming. But yeah, that was a game that I had circled preseason as that was going to be tough.
I mean, oh yeah, the Florida State Miami game, that's always a tough battle for both teams right there. I want to go over a little bit about the big one last Sunday. You guys got left out of the top four. You're unbeaten, and you did something that Alabama couldn't do. You beat LSU by 21. They beat them by 14. That was one of the things y'all had as well. What was the reaction when you found out Florida State was not going to be in? I mean, I got a feeling it was kind of like, SpongeBob seeing that somebody doesn't like Krabby Patties, the explosion in his eyes.
Yeah, so this is, I might get a little heated in this portion right here, but, I thought it was a little funny, the college game day when Florida State played North Alabama that morning. Jordan Travis was still fine. He had not got hurt. He got hurt later that night. and they were playing their chaos scenarios. And they said, well, what if Florida State wins out? What if Texas wins out? And what if Alabama wins out, beats Georgia? And Kirk Herbstreit says, undefeated Florida State is out. Texas and Alabama are in. That was before Jordan got hurt. And I'm like, oh, he's just trying to get ratings, whatever, get people to watch ESPN, watch the playoff show, etc. And then the next week happened, or that night happened, Jordan gets hurt. Florida State's still 4. They go on the road with the backup quarterback, beat Florida in a hostile environment in a rivalry game. Granted, Florida wasn't any good this year, and they remain at number 4. So I'm like, okay, perfect. We win and we're in. Greg McElroy on the rankings release show the Wednesday before Selection Sunday said, yeah, they win and they're in. Dan Olstein said the same thing. They win and they're in. All right, so we find out Tate Rodemaker, our second-string quarterback, is hurt. He's out. So we got a third-string quarterback against the number 14 team in the country, and we dominate them with our defense. Offense struggled, I get it, but the defense was dominant. We beat them, and the next morning, I wake up and see our athletic director tweeting out, basically campaigning and politicking to get us in the playoff. And I'm like, this isn't right. Like, something's wrong here. And we're driving home from Charlotte because we were at the ACC title game back down to Florida. I had my wife driving, and I'm watching the selection show on my phone, sitting here watching. And right when 12 o'clock comes on, both McElroy and Dan have changed their stance. Like, no, it's got to be Alabama. And I felt my stomach drop at that point, and I knew we're getting screwed here. And they're going to put Alabama in. And because they're putting Alabama in, they have to put Texas in because Texas had the head-to-head win. And as soon as I saw Texas at number 3, I knew we were screwed. And I knew we were not going to be at number 4. The stage had been set for weeks prior. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it certainly seems like there was a lot going on. And when you consider the facts that Boo Corrigan, the NC State's athletic director, was the chairman of the committee, his brother is a VP of production for ESPN, and ESPN just invested $3 billion in the SEC for the future. Yeah, I have serious questions, and I've been very vocal on Twitter. In fact, I just got blocked by Kirk Herbstreit about 30 minutes ago, which is fine because I never want to see that man in Tallahassee again. But yeah, this whole situation is a joke because they were campaigning to leave Florida State out before Jordan got hurt, and now they're leaning on the stance, oh, if they didn't have Jordan get hurt, they would be in. No, that's nonsense. This decision was made to me weeks ago.
That's just insane. I mean, the fact that Boo Corrigan, or I got his name right.
Yeah.
Corrigan and Tim Corrigan are related. I can't help but feel there's like a little conflict of interest. I've read,
and his dad was the commissioner of the ACC when Florida State joined the ACC. It's just such a tangled web. And I don't know if you saw much of this, but leading up to the season at the Florida State Board of Trustees meetings, they were very vocal knowing this was live streamed to the world. We are getting out of the ACC. It makes me wonder somewhat, okay, you guys want to get out of the ACC? And one other thing, Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, he was the one who blocked a 12-team playoff happening this year. So did the committee, ESPN, SEC
wishing
say,
for
all right,
it to come already now.
Yeah, say, all right, you cost us billions of dollars in the inventory and advertisement. We're just going to leave your team out and put the rest in. I'm not typically a conspiracy theorist, but there's a lot of dots to connect right around here.
Yeah, I mean that's just not right. Because it's like, look, don't get me wrong. I love my Crimson Tide, but I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, well, I'm going to put them above everybody. No. You got to look at the top teams in all college football. Not by the teams you love, but by the teams that are the best. Here's how I would have worded it. Michigan 1, number 2, Washington, number 3, Florida State, number 4, Texas.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. My wife is a lifelong Bama fan, and I think maybe she saw.
Sorry, Mrs. Barnes. Nothing. I love my Crimson Tide, but this hurts me more than it does Bama.
No. Maybe she was just saw how down and beaten down I was, but she said no less than 100 times this week, man. She's like, baby, I wish it was you guys going instead of us. And I think the biggest frustration for me is if they kept citing Jordan Travis, right? They kept citing that injury. And if that was truly the case, why did you leave Florida State at number 4 after the Florida game? Why not drop them down to 5, 6, 7, 8 and say we need to see more from them against Louisville? they'll have an opportunity to get back in the top 4. But leaving us at number 4 after, we were down 13-0 to North Alabama when Jordan got hurt. So basically we were 2-0 without Jordan. And the quarterback that played against Louisville wasn't going to be the quarterback to play against Michigan or Washington, whoever it may have been. And they all know that. And they're talking around it all week. And it's just frustrating. But, the committee did themselves a disservice. What I personally think, they thought we were going to lose to either Florida or Louisville. They didn't want to have to be the ones to do the dirty work. And once we beat both those teams, they said, I don't know. And I'm surprised Greg McElroy didn't block me, because I made sure to comment at him, and because he said you can't win a championship without a good quarterback. Greg McElroy, 2007, you were 6 for 12 for 58 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and Alabama beat Texas. Don't tell me you can't win a championship without a good quarterback, because defense matters, and Florida State had a dominant defense at the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that should have given me alarm bells on Saturday when watching College Game Day was Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, begging, just getting down on his hands and knees, begging, lobbying for the SEC champ. Like, they should be in no matter what, because we've had an SEC team in since 2014, since the inception of playoffs. I'm like, bro, the game hasn't been played. How do you know what's gonna happen? I'm no theorist either, but I wonder if he knew what. He was just, that's just.
So I think they all knew, because, another thing that, Florida State Twitter is, man, we are nuts. We are wild, and we catch everything. And after the Florida game at the selection show, Kirk, behind him at his house, he has, a little bookcase with helmets, and the 4 helmets he had were the top 4 teams. And then they go to live on the selection show on Sunday, and they're talking about how we don't know what teams are. We don't know who they are yet. But behind Kirk, he had Michigan, Washington, Texas, and Alabama. Florida State had been removed from his bookcase. That, small things like that, like they knew the whole time. And, and honestly, that's Greg Sankey doing his job. He's the commissioner of the conference. He needs to be out in front. And, he is one of the most powerful people in college football, and nothing but respect to him. Jim Phillips on the other side of the ACC is a joke. He should have been out there weeks ago on every ESPN show, Fox Sports show, Sirius XM show, whatever it may be, lobbying, say, listen, if we have a 13-0 conference champ in a Power 5 conference, we better get in there. And what pissed me off the most, when Florida State beat Louisville, and they're at the podium, and Jim Phillips is handing Mike Norvell the trophy, that was your perfect chance. You're on national TV. Now you need to lobby for your school in your conference, even if the decision was already made, which I think it was. Say, hey, can't wait to see you in the college football playoff. You guys have earned it on the field. He said nothing. He just hands it over. Jim Phillips has been a disaster. A lot of people thought he was going to be the Big Ten commissioner, and after Kevin Warren left, and he was disappointed he didn't get picked. He's been a joke to the ACC, and that's been known for years. But yeah, no one from the ACC has stepped up, and not a single ACC coach that I'm aware of has come out in support of Florida State, which is funny because Mizzou's coach came out saying Florida State should have got in. Jaden Daniels said in an interview Florida State should have got in. He's going to win the Heisman Trophy probably. But we get no support from the ACC. I do think Florida State being so public, preseason saying we're leaving the ACC one way or the other, I do think that might have hurt them a little bit. But in the end, I don't think it would have mattered. Even if Jordan Travis was healthy and Florida State had won that game against Louisville, I still think the connections and the tangled web that I talked about, Florida State would have been left out. I truly believe that.
Yeah, I saw a tweet on the day that Florida State got left out from Jordan Travis. I mean, he felt guilty, and he was like, oh, I wish I had my... It's like, dude. And I replied on Twitter. I was like, it's not your fault. ESPN screwed you guys out of a playoff bid. That's not your fault.
No, and that was heartbreaking when I saw that, because with Jordan Travis. So for those who don't know, he started his college career at Louisville, had a horrible experience that first year there, and he entered. There was no portal at the time, but he said he was transferring, didn't know where he was going to go. Just so happened Willie Taggart was the coach of Florida State at the time, and Willie Taggart had failed to sign a high school quarterback, not his first class, but his first two classes. And he had to appease the fan base somehow by bringing in the quarterback some way. Brought in Jordan Travis, who no one really believed in. And when he got to Florida State, wasn't very good. Willie never even played him, and it wasn't until Willie got fired until Jordan Travis saw the field, and people were like, "Oh, this guy's an athlete. He's not much of a passer of the ball." Then last year, we're like, "Oh, what happened? This guy can throw the ball." He wanted to quit football or move to receiver. And shout out Arizona State head coach, Florida State's former offensive coordinator, Kenny Dillingham, who convinced him to stay at quarterback at Florida State. And then, like I said, last year, he took a step that I've never seen at Florida State, a quarterback taken from one year to another year. And like, man, yeah, he can run, but this is a passing quarterback. He is the face. Him and Mike Norvell are the faces of the resurrection of this program. And to see him go down, I was in that stadium when he broke his leg. And, immediately I see him go down. I see the players' reactions. And then I see the trainer sprinting out with the air cast. I turned to my wife and said, guys, it's over for him. This season, his career at Florida State's done. And then I get home and I see the TV broadcast angle of it, and it looked worse than I could ever imagine. And apparently they showed it like 6-7 times. Shout out to the CW for not being able to read the room. But yeah, it just sucked because Jordan Travis really is the one player who resurrected this program. Jared Verse would not have come back this season if not for Jordan Travis. Same can be said for several other players on Florida State's roster. For the younger fan base, he might be the most favorite quarterback in school history. I'm 35, so for me, it's probably still Charlie Ward because I can appreciate everything he did. Man, Jameis won us a natty. I put Jordan on level ground with Jameis because what Jordan did, inheriting a mess, coming to play for Willie Taggart in a complete crap show of program, starting 0-4 his second year, lost to Jacksonville State at home. Mike Norvell brought in Mackenzie Milton to start over Jordan Travis after Jordan earned the job. Just he had been through so much adversity. This was his season, and to see him go down on senior night and not even have the chance to finish the season. And I would have loved for ESPN, Kirk Herbstreit, the committee, to have to explain to us if he had stayed healthy why Florida State was not in the college football playoff, because there'd be no excuse at that time. But like I said, I still think they would have done it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to go ahead and compare these older teams to the 2023 Florida State. 1966 Alabama, 1969 Penn State, 2004 Auburn, 2014 TCU, and you may or may not like this, Nats one. The 2000 Miami football team.
Yeah.
What do you think of the 2023 Florida State team being compared to these teams? Because, I mean, they all got one thing in common. They got screwed out of a shot of a national champion.
Yeah, well, I don't feel bad for the Miami team because Florida State's the one who benefited to get to the national title game that year. Right. Even though Miami beat us head-to-head, which Miami was screwed, let's be honest. But yeah, these other teams, it's different, right? Because we're talking about, pre-BCS era in some cases where, some of these national championship games, it was, number 1 versus 7 and number 3 versus 4, and then they would just pick a random team that next Monday. It's just crazy. But yeah, that's what I think the biggest argument is for that 2004 Auburn team to feel screwed. And it's crazy to think that, just 2 years later, that dynasty the SEC started where they won 7 straight natties happened, where an undefeated SEC team was left out of a chance to win a national title. That's wild to think about this day and age where you got a one-loss SEC team jumping an undefeated ACC team. But, I just think it's, and here's what bothers me the most. I truly believe if Georgia had beat Alabama, Florida State would have got in because they would have put Florida State at 3, Alabama at 4. But since Alabama won, you can't put not Alabama at 4. They would have put whoever finished right behind us. But the thing about this year, the committee knew they could not put Alabama in without also including Texas. So if Georgia had eliminated Alabama, Florida State's in, because then you have 3 undefeated Power 5 conference champions at 1, 2, and 3, and then throw it number 4, whoever you want to be, whether that had been, whoever it would have been. I can't even think. Maybe Ohio State, who didn't win it, or whoever it was, they could have had their choice. But I think Texas is the biggest benefactor of Alabama winning on a Hail Mary on a 4th and 31 uh, between the hedges, and then a very good win against Georgia, because nobody beat Georgia in what, 20 something games. I mean, that's a great win. And part of me thought when I saw, because again, my wife's a big Bama fan, we're watching that game on the couch, and in the back of my head, I'm like, this would be good for Florida State if Alabama loses, but I'm not going to cheer for it because I don't want to piss my wife off. But when they pulled it off, she went nuts, and I'm like, all right, that's a good win. I didn't think much of it because, again, the committee still had us at number 4. I'm like, I got nothing to worry about. We're going to be fine. And now it played out like it did.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the Orange Bowl. You guys are playing the 2-time defending national champs, the Georgia Bulldogs.
Great consolation prize.
I will say, will there be something similar to the 1967 Sugar Bowl where Bama beat down Nebraska, and and the 2014 Peach Bowl where TCU just spanked Ole Miss? Will we see something like that from Florida State against Georgia?
No. And the reason I say that, unfortunately, Johnny Wilson, he's the only official opt-out for Florida State right now. I'd be surprised if Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, Jared Verse, Trey Benson, Renato Green, Kalen DeLoach, go on and on. Florida State's going to be playing with the second-string roster, and I do think Georgia will as well. And that's where the problem is. If both teams are at full strength, even without Jordan, I think Florida State's defense makes it a game. I truly do. I think they could, Georgia probably wins still, maybe 28-20, 28-17. But Georgia's backups are much, much more better than Florida State's backups are right now. I'd put Florida State starters up against anyone in the country. But Florida State has not built that depth yet. They're getting there. They have the number 3 recruiting class in the country right now. But even them, they're not going to be there for another 2 to 3 years. I just think Georgia's done such a good job of recruiting the past 4 or 5 years that Georgia's backups, I'll put it this way, Florida State's best, the person who kicked off the transfer portal for Florida State, Jermaine Johnson, he was a backup at Georgia and was probably going to be a backup again, so he entered the portal, ends up at Florida State, has one of the most dominant seasons at defensive end any Florida State player has seen at that position, and now he's killing it with the New York Jets. That's the depth Georgia has. Their backups are all Americans at other schools, and that's what scares me the most about this game. And you have a backup quarterback, Tate Rodemaker. I don't think he's going to have Keon Coleman to throw the ball to. I don't think, we know for a fact Johnny Wilson won't be there. Jaheim Bell, who was great for us, the transfer from South Carolina, he's not going to be playing in the game most likely. It's just, you're basically playing your backups versus backups. It's an exhibition game. And, people call this sour grapes, say what you want. The last game the 2023 Florida State Seminoles played was in Charlotte last week, because what we're going to see down in Miami isn't going to be anything close to what this team actually was.
Yeah, I know that there'll be a few opt-outs here and there from everybody. And I know there's some people that say, oh, Florida State should play. Oh, well, Florida State shouldn't play. Yeah. Just to kind of screw ESPN out of that money. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a lot of Florida State. As a fan base, we are very emotional. I'm an emotional guy, especially as a fan. But at the end of the day, it sounds good on paper, but it makes no sense, right? You're screwing ESPN out of the money. You know who else you're screwing out of the money? Yourselves, because we get a good, nice paycheck for being in that Orange Bowl. And I think it's just a bad look nationally. You might make the majority of the Florida State fan base happy, saying, oh, screw it, we're not going to play, we're going to take our practices and whatever. It sounds a lot to me like, oh, I'm a child, I'm going to take my ball and go home. I don't want that. Another suggestion I've seen is, guys, why not protest it by, wearing shirts or something that say something about the committee and pregame warmups and all this? I don't like that either, because of what we just talked about. Okay, you're going to wear a shirt saying we got screwed or something like that, or the committee got it wrong. Georgia's probably going to win by 20 points because, again, their backups are that much better than your backups. And then even though Kirk Herbstreit's and Greg McElroy's of the world the backups, Florida State wasn't at full strength. No, they're going to run with that narrative like, look at them. They ran with this protest and they got blown out. And, now you see why we chose to leave them out or why the committee chose to leave them out. It's a lose-lose situation. I know Mike Norvell, he's going to, whoever's playing in this game, Norvell is going to take this very seriously and do his best to get them ready and prepared. I'm not saying Florida State can't win. I just think the talent advantage is vastly in Georgia's favor based on the rosters I think they field, right? Obviously, Brock Bowers isn't going to play in this game. Why would he? It'd be foolish. He already got hurt once this year. There are going to be several other Georgia players who sit this out. But again, the difference with Florida State, we have a lot of transfer portal guys that were 2 and 3 stars that played like 5 stars. Our backups are high 3, 4 stars. All of Georgia's backups are high 4 and 5 stars. And that makes a difference, especially when you're young, right? They're just athletes. They are NFL ready by year 2 in this program, typically. So I understand Florida State fans who say boycott the game or do some sort of boycott. I get it. We are emotional as college football fans. If you're watching a show like this, you are a bigger fan than almost anybody. Just like I tell everyone who watches Double Fries and Slaw, if you're watching our show, guys, you are on the fringe of anyone when it comes to the Florida State fanatics. That's why I tell them, go give to the Battle's End, our collective. Go give to some of the boosters, because if you aren't given to it, then who else is? But yeah, I don't like the idea of, I understand the idea emotionally of boycotting the game or some sort of protest, but I just think it's a bad look nationally and potentially could be used against you in recruiting, which is the last thing you want.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna say do it for the ACC because that's not because the AC screwed you guys. I will be
Nope.
honest. I wonder if this is gonna cause Florida State to go, oh, we're going to the SEC or we're going to the Big Ten. I think they'd rather want to go to the Big Ten because they're like, that conference hasn't screwed us over. SEC screwed us over. But what do you think? Like, because I know there were rumors in the offseason. Is something going to intensify this upcoming?
That's the biggest thing. Everyone's like, what does Florida State have to do? Number one, they have to leave this conference. They don't have a choice. They have to get out of here, and they have to get out of here as soon as possible. And if I'm Michael Alford, Florida State's athletic director, I'm calling up North Carolina State, Virginia, Clemson, saying, guys, we need to get out of here, because if enough teams decide to leave the conference, guess what? You can leave scot-free. There's no exit fee. There's no grant of rights buyout. And you just hope that between the Big Ten and the SEC, and by that, I mean Fox and ESPN, agree to say, hey, you take these teams, we'll take these teams, let the other ESPN guys find out where they go, whether that's Louisville, the Virginia Tech world, end up in the Big 12, that's great, because we need those schools like that to be gone, right? When I think of the Big Ten, Virginia, North Carolina, they make perfect sense. Florida State makes sense. Florida State is not an AAU school, but they probably will be in the next 2 years. That's a big deal. Miami, where do they end up? I think the Big Ten would take them because they are an AAU school, but they're they don't have the fan base support or what it takes. But yeah, it's either the SEC or Big Ten. And, you hear Florida State fans saying, oh, we need to get a bidding war between the two conferences, the SEC and Big Ten. No, you don't need a bidding war. You need to find a home and find it now. And even if it means riding it, and the big thing here is, what's it going to cost Florida State to leave if they can't get all these other schools to leave? The numbers I've seen anywhere from $100 to $500 million. I can tell you, if it was $100 million, Florida State would write that check tomorrow. They would have those funds lined up and ready to go, because it would pay itself off in 4 years. If it's upwards of $500 million, now it's a different topic. We need to call John Rahm and say, hey, give me some of that live money. But that's not where we're at right now. I know Florida State is exploring every single avenue to get out of the ACC. Jim Phillips and every single athletic director in the ACC knows that. Can Michael Alford, Florida State's athletic director, convince enough ACC schools to leave wherever they can go to one of those 3 conferences, the Big Ten, the SEC, or the Big 12? That's what's got to happen. It's my prediction Florida State will play in the ACC next year. That there's no choice but to, because they missed the deadline. By 2026, Florida State will not be in the ACC anymore. I firmly believe that. 2025 might be a stretch, but it could happen.
I mean, at this point, nothing really surprises me because I mean, like on the one hand, it's like, oh, we gotta find a way to keep Florida State, Miami, Florida State, Florida, all that stuff.
No.
But I know it's like I got a feeling, we're gonna see something like that gone at some point because of conference realignment. Because of this isn't like the '90s where Florida State could keep Florida and Miami. This is a whole different era.
And that's what sucks. I do feel like when Florida State leaves, there's a chance they're going to lose either the Florida or the Miami game or both, at least from an annual happening. That would suck because at both those games, me growing up in the '90s watching this team, that's what I grew up on. Florida State in the 1990s, they played each other 12 times. Every single matchup was a top 10 matchup. That's unheard of. For a team two teams play 12 times in one decade, and every single time both teams ranked in the top 10. Unfortunately, those days are gone. And I will gladly sacrifice the Florida or Miami or both annual rivalries to get into the SEC or Big Ten. And if we get in the SEC, we'll still play Florida every year. If we get in the Big Ten, we'll probably still play Florida every year. Miami, I don't know. Like, and I don't care about Miami. No, whatever. I'm done with Miami.
Oh, that traditionalist inside me is just like,
No, I get that, but this is
okay,
2023 college football.
true, and it's only gonna get bigger from there. I mean, because we're gonna be seeing 2014 comp.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it eventually, I don't know, we'll call it by 2030, you're going to have, two main conferences. And I think the NCAA needs to do the right thing. And all these group of fives and the leftovers from the current Power Five, give them their own national championship playoff or whatever it may be. Because we're talking about, does Liberty deserve a spot in the playoff? No, they don't. We saw Cincinnati in the playoff. They did not belong. Alabama did whatever they wanted with them. Let's not do that again. Which again, another reason I'm pissed off. We're not in the playoff. You put Cincinnati in, but you can't put a 13-0 Florida State in. I digress. But yeah, I think it's going to be two power conferences. It's going to be the Big Ten, the SEC. You're going to have 20 to 30 teams each, and put the rest in their own division and give them their own national title game, so don't have to hear about these group of fives. I live in Orlando, and I have to hear about UCF fans all the time. Oh, we're the 2017 national champs. I'm like, no, you're not. You didn't get in because you did not belong. You would not have hung with any of those teams in the playoff in 2017. Cool, you beat an Auburn team who had no interest in being in the Peach Bowl. That does not make you national champs. My wife, hardcore Bama fan, graduated from UCF, and she hates that they claimed that national title. She's embarrassed by it.
I don't blame her. It's just good grief. And Scott
Yeah.
Frost, I kind of think he let that 2017 season go to his head because he did not do so hot at Nebraska.
Nebraska didn't work.
Nope. And ironically, when Clay Helton got fired after the second week of 2021 season from that excruciating loss to Stanford, year later, he's coaching at Georgia Southern. They're beating Nebraska. Day later, we see Frost get fired.
Yeah, I love how USC just fires coaches randomly, like Lane Kiffin on the tarmac. Like, no, just find your own ride home, and then Clay Helton, and like we're done with you. That's man. We'll see what happens. I'll be surprised if Lincoln Riley lasts, because if he keeps putting up 40 points a game but gives up 45, eventually those fans are gonna be like, hey, we're spending a lot of money on you, and now in the NIL era, we're spending a lot of money on these players. Where's the return? Because they're not getting one right now.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that new DC is going to be a little better than Alex, but I guess we'll wait and see in the.
Yeah, well, he doesn't do his defense any favors because he wants to go fast. And if he gets a three and out, and if you pile up 2, 3, 4 three and outs in a row, or 4, 5, 6 play possessions in a row, man, your defense is on the field for a long time. You're asking them to do a lot. That's not going to work in college football, especially when the offense has such a massive advantage against defenses in college football. Outside of a few, maybe 10, 12 defenses, offense has the advantage every single week in college football.
Oh yeah, but like one question I've got for the ACC title game, I wonder if Florida State would have gotten in if they had beaten Louisville 49-6, or still will have.
I think we're out regardless. And we kind of talked about it a little bit, how Kirk Herbstreit, he was, before Jordan got hurt, it was saying if Texas and Alabama go undefeated, they get in over Florida State. What do you mean? We have a Heisman caliber candidate right here at quarterback, and you're saying we should be left out? And I don't know if you're familiar with Pardon My Take, but
Oh, that's from Barstool Sports, I
yeah.
believe.
Yeah, it's the number one sports podcast in the world. And Kirk Herbstreit went on there that same week. And, one of the co-hosts on Pardon My Take said, if Florida State wins out, the committee has to do the right thing and put them in. And Herbstreit's exact quote was, I don't care about doing the right thing. I want who I think are the best four teams. He was telling us all along what was going to happen. He said straight up, I don't care about doing the right thing. Exact quote. And that's when I didn't know, because I still had some faith in the committee. But that's when I really should have known there's no way we're getting into the playoff, no matter what happens, which sucks because I never thought in my lifetime, as someone who grew up in the 90s, Florida State finished in the top four every single year in the 90s. I never would have thought we'd be in the conversation being left out to 2 one-loss teams, but it happened. And it shows, in my opinion, again, put the tinfoil hat on, say whatever y'all want. The decision had been made. There was no reason for Florida State to even play Louisville. It was a pointless game. I'm glad we're bringing the trophy back to Tallahassee, and you can hang the ACC banner, which we don't really care about at Florida State because we got plenty of them. We wanted a chance. And that's the thing that bothers me the most. Yeah, I do think Michigan or Washington probably beats Florida State with a backup quarterback. But why not give us the opportunity? Just give these, not us, give the kids the chance who earned it. 13 weeks. And one thing I said is it wasn't just the 13 weeks that they earned it. It goes back to January, when it goes back to winter, training drills. It goes through spring football. It goes through summer. The team organized 7-on-7s where the coaching staff can't be there. Fall camp. This wasn't just a 3-month thing. This was an 11-month process that everything they put in, everything were told to do, they did. And at the end of the day, corporate America says, nah, not good enough. It's ridiculous.
I don't care about the right thing. What a great.
Yep, exact quote.
I feel like I'm just like my mind is still hearing that quote.
I'll DM you the exact video so you can see it. And the way he said it, like he used explicitives, saying it's BS that we're doing the ratings. I don't care about doing the right thing. I want the 4 effing best teams. Like it's trained in my mind.
That's just something.
Yeah.
I mean, like don't get me wrong, where it's like I love my team, but again, it's like I'm not like 13-year-old me. That sounds like something 13-year-old me.
Well, that's the thing. I think you could probably make an argument there'd be 11, 12 teams favored over Florida State if they were to play this week. Cool. But did they earn it? Because Florida State did. Washington was a 2-score underdog against Oregon heading into the Pac-12 championship. Oregon was favored by 9.5 points. Washington won. Well, why not send Oregon? They were favored by more. Who cares what happened on the field? That's how Florida State fans feel. We got screwed because they were projecting as opposed to just letting the games play out as they may. In the NFL, can you imagine week 16, the Chiefs are, I don't know, the 4 seed, and Pat Mahomes tears an ACL? They've already clinched a playoff spot. And then Roger Goodell comes out and says, no, you know what, Kansas City, you're out. We're going to put, San Diego in instead because we don't think you can win your quarterback. To me, that's the crazy. College football is the only sport in the world where the results on the field don't matter at the end of the day. And I'll say this again, or this for the first time, but there's only been twice in the history of the college football playoff rankings where an undefeated Power 5 team has been jumped by a one-loss team. That was Florida State this year and Florida State in 2014 when Oregon jumped us when we were undefeated and they had a loss.
Oh, yeah, that was the 2014 team where they always found a way to win.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that team.
Yep. So that's where we're at.
Well, I will ask though, for those that are going to be watching the Orange Bowl that don't know exactly the strengths and weaknesses, keys to victory, what are the strengths and weaknesses to look out for from a Florida State?
Yeah, so it's really hard to tell, just depending on who's going to play and who's not. Um, I have a feeling that by, you know, mid next week we'll have a lot better idea of who's playing. Florida State's got to be able to run the ball a little bit, which to me seems like almost an impossible task, even against Georgia's backups. Florida State's already had two offensive linemen hit the transfer portal, who I assume will not play in the game. I really like Florida State's running backs, but they've not been. It's weird. The run blocking hasn't been great for Florida State pretty much all year, but their pass protection has been phenomenal. But we are going in with the backup quarterback and Tate Rodemaker. And, our 6'7 Johnny Wilson, he is not playing. His next game will be the Reese Senior Bowl. Keon Coleman, the transfer from Michigan State, who is just an amazing, probably a first-round draft pick. He's not announced anything. I'd be shocked if he played. We'll see what happens. It's hard to say without knowing who's opting in, who's not opting out. I'll say if the game were played at full strength, Florida State's biggest strength is their defense. They were dominant. In their last 38 possessions, they allowed one touchdown. And that one touchdown came in the Florida game on a 3rd and long when it was a clean sack and a ref threw the most egregious roughing the passer penalty I've ever seen, and Florida scored on the next play. Otherwise, Florida State's defense would have had 0 touchdowns in the last 38 possessions. That is dominant. I don't care who you're playing. That doesn't happen. Defensively, again, if Florida State were at full strength, that defensive line is one of the best in the country. It really is. I think they would match up against Georgia's offensive line. I really do. And, Carson Beck, I don't know what year he is, if he'll play or not.
I think it's a junior dog.
Junior. So I don't know if he has NFL aspirations or he's planning to come back for a senior year. He might be one of those guys that's a fringe NFL guy, but he can get a lot of NIL money to come back for one more year in college and then go sell auto insurance for a long time in Athens. We'll see how that plays out. But it's just so hard to tell because I'm going to watch the Orange Bowl. Originally, I was going to plan to go down there, but I'm not going to say because they have not made it official. I've heard a lot of key names that will not play for Florida State. Which is a bummer because, you talked about some of these big bowl games in the 60s and 80s and even 90s. Everyone wanted to play. It was an honor to play in the Orange Bowl. You were like, oh my God, we're going to the Orange Bowl. Even if you knew you weren't going to win a national title, like, it's still the Orange Bowl. This is a big deal. I feel like around 2015, 2016, maybe Christian McCaffrey was the first big name.
2016 with Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah. Yeah, they were the first big ones to sit him out. Surprisingly, I was at the 2016 Orange Bowl against Michigan, and Dalvin Cook chose to play, which kind of surprised me. But really, ever since then, so the past 6 years or so, if you have NFL aspirations within the next few months, why even play in these games? They're exhibitions. And that sucks because these games used to mean something. One of my favorite games ever, and Florida State lost this one, was the 2006 Orange Bowl against Penn State, 3 overtimes.
Joe Paterno, Bobby Bowden.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal game, and Florida State, again, missed the freaking field goal. But everyone played, and everyone put their lives on the line in that game, and that's just not the case anymore. And I would get it if it was, the Kumquat Bowl or, the Cheez-It Bowl, what Florida State was in last year. But no, this is the Orange Bowl. It was the orange, the rose, the cotton. Like, these games were the sugar. These games didn't matter if you had a chance at a national title. You played in this game. You gave your all. It's never a question of opting out. And now it's like, I'm surprised if the kid even plays.
I think what set off the Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette opt-out, and what really set off the opt-out was the Jalen Smith injury in the 2016 Fiesta Bowl from Notre Dame, Ohio State, where he was a first-round draft pick, but then he became a second-round draft. And then those guys saw that, and they're like, not going to be me. I'll see now here.
Yeah, and again, I don't blame any of these players for opting out. Like I would do the same. And if I had a kid that was in that situation, I would tell him the same thing. Like, no, you're not playing. You're going to make millions of dollars in 5 months. Just sit this out. Go to the game, support your team, all that good stuff. It just sucks for us as fans because it goes against everything that we knew growing up watching this game that we love.
Yeah, like some of the armchair fans at like the house or drinking a
Mhm.
beer on the chair, they're like, "Well, these kids don't know what's good these days. I'd play in that ball game." Okay, then why don't you go play in that ball?
Yeah, put some
No,
pads on,
no, I'm
buddy.
not going to. Like that would be fun because I mean it was like it's funny when I was younger. I used to have like kind of a bad attitude about players that sat out for the ball game because it was like. But then as I got older, kind of grew up some, still growing up. I'm just like get out the game. I mean, you don't owe these.
No,
You don't owe them anything.
no,
They jump on the bandwagon with whatever the current thing.
no. It's like when when one of a NFL player from your school signs a huge contract, and fans like, oh, why isn't he even back to the Florida State? I'm like, why should he? Like, if he wants to, that's awesome. I would love that. But he doesn't owe Florida State anything. Like, he came here, sacrificed his body every single week for 3 to 4 years, and then he made it.
Right.
Did we play a role in that? Sure. But he played a bigger role, far bigger role than we ever could have imagined to play. So, no, I get these players. Like, I will always side with the players. When it came down, we had a defensive end really good player, Patrick Payton, announced on Twitter that he intended to enter the transfer portal. And some Florida State fans lost their minds and they were mad at him. I'm like, you know who else enters the portal every year? Head coaches for better jobs and more money. That's all he's doing is looking for more money. And guess what? If the market's not there, he'll come back and we'll pay him what we think he's worth. Maybe someone else thinks he's worth more. But I don't blame these kids for testing the market. I have a job. If someone in a similar field, another company says, hey, I'm going to pay you 20% more. Okay, I'm going to go to my employer and say, hey, I'm going to take this job unless you match it. And if he calls my bluff, that's fine. I'm going to take the job. The problem is a lot of these players are entering the portal thinking they're going to have opportunities that they don't have because they had bad advisors, which that's the disappointing part for them because there's over 2,000 players in the portal right now. 1,000 of them will not find a home. And that's the worst part because they don't have the support system in place. So I know we're getting way off topic now, but the
Okay.
portal has been fascinating to me.
I will say, don't worry about going off topic. That's what this show's for. We talk about everything we want.
Yeah, it's something else in this portal. And that's the thing, like with me, my deep-hearted passion and love for Florida State will never die. My deep-hearted passion for college football died a lot Sunday night or Sunday afternoon when Florida State was left out of the college football playoff. And it wasn't because of me. I'm like, woe is me. This is terrible. No, I know these players. I know the athletic director. I these guys, and I know what they've been through, going from 3-6 to 5-7 to 10-3 to 13-0, and to not get rewarded for a chance to cap that off, especially these seniors. That I hurt way more for the players than I ever would for myself. And I don't know if I'll ever look at college football the same after Sunday.
I don't blame you, man. It's insane. I have no words for it because just especially at the we don't care about doing the right thing
Mm-hmm.
from part of my take.
Yeah.
But it's just like Boo Corrigan and Jim Grobe were on that playoff committee. I read something where Corrigan has some kind of grudge against Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not.
I don't know if he does or not. It might just be the fact that he's an athletic director in the ACC, and again, Florida State's been very vocal about wanting to leave the ACC. And maybe he feels like NC State may not have a home elsewhere other than maybe the Big 12. So it's a grudge. I don't know. There's so many tangled webs and all that good stuff, and we'll see. But let me play this for you real quick, just so you can hear Kirk exactly.
All right, man.
Let's see here.
So as a guy who calls these games, I don't want to do the right thing. If you talk to Bill Hancock, and we had lots of meetings about this, they're not supposed to do the right thing. They're supposed to, their job is put the best four teams in the playoff. Now, again, it's subjective. Who you think and I think are the best four are different, and that's fine. But that's what that group is supposed to do. Not what do we think about ratings? That's bullshit. Put the fucking best four teams in the game. So as a guy who calls these games.
Yeah. So when I heard that, that's when I kind of knew Florida State didn't have a chance.
But they say truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah, he told us the truth, but unfortunately, none of us Florida State fans were listening at the time.
Oh, he's gonna be doing.
Sorry for the cursing that Kirk did. It wasn't me.
You're
it was
good.
Kirk.
You're good. No worries, man. I'll just put a little trigger warning for some of the people that.
There you go.
Trigger warning: profanity. Viewer discretion is advised.
Yeah, we keep our pod clean, but our post selection show pod, we marked explicit, and it was X-rated. I can tell you that much.
No worries on this show. You won't hear any complaints out of me. I can tell you that. It was holy cow. But as we wrap this show up, and for those who would like to watch Double Fries No Slaw, or watch you, or talk with you about Florida State, or kind of hear the story of Kirk Herbstreit not being too happy with you, but maybe his dog Ben will have a better attitude with you. Golden Retrievers are pretty. Can they find you?
Yeah, we're on everything. Double Fries Pod. Most of our stuff's on YouTube. We're on X, Facebook, I believe. You can find me personally on the Twitter /X at R_Barnes, BARNES 407. Again, got blocked by Kirk Herbstreit today, so that's a badge of honor as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, there you go.
It probably didn't help that I tweeted at him that I hope Ben pooped on his face in the hotel room, but that's fine.
Yeah, that probably might have done it. Although he might be pooping on the Ohio State stuff. He's probably gonna have the "it's not okay."
No, jeez, yeah. Oh man, don't eat Kirk. I'm done with Kirk now. They got the block. I'm sorry, I hate to say it. My wife loves the man. I'm on to McElroy, and I'm on to Dan.
Well, I will say though,
and I've always liked McElroy. That's the sad thing. I've always liked him. I just think he got his marching orders by the executives. So
I will say I really hope that the committee doesn't get overly intimidated by ESPN next year, but I'm not counting, hold my breath at the moment.
No.
I kind of feel like ESPN's kind of losing their ad revenue more and more as the years go on, which I think losing the Big Ten, that really hurt them.
Yeah. I think, them stealing the entire SEC inventory from the CBS was big. I think that was huge for them. ESPN will be just fine. It's really, and that's what everyone says, like, are you mad at the SEC? Whatever. No, I'm like, no, ESPN and Fox run college football 100% right now. So you got to get on the good side of one of them. Us Florida State fans have not done a great job of getting ESPN on our side this week, but again, dollars speak more than angry fans. So I do think Florida State ends up in one of the two conferences, and I do think, or the two networks, they're in talks. Like, call it collusion or whatever you want. The Big Ten and ESPN, they're going to say, hey, who do we want? How do we want to split this up? I truly believe those talks are happening, and we'll see how it plays out.
I will say that I'll definitely be pulling for Florida State in the Orange Bowl over Georgia. But who's my pick going to be? I'll be honest, sure. But I have to go with my head instead of my heart. But until next time, like, comment, subscribe on YouTube at JacksonJohnson979. Give me a follow on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads, where I just kind of run my mouth about what's going on. You can also hear more updates on the next several episodes of the Jacksonian. Stick around, stay tuned. I'll catch you next time. Stay safe, stay warm. It's cold out.